The expo period, we were in a small office on Mount Auburn Street in Cambridge, and there were always 5 or 6 staff people, and we had, various schools and work with Cambridge 7 Associates, other projects with other architects. We had it was very hard for me as a woman to hire top-notch landscape architects. Why work for an unknown woman when you could work for a famous landscape architect out in Watertown, for Sasaki or some of the others? So I had a very tough time. I had enough work. I had, schools, colleges, and I had to hire people. I hired a sculptor. Actually, I hired 2 sculptors and turned one of them into a landscape architect, and one of them went on to study architecture, but he said that, working for me in the office was what gave him the inspiration to go on and become an architect. So I had a bunch of somewhat, less than perfectly trained landscape architects. There was also a very odd law back then that if people quit their jobs, you had to pay unemployment. And here I was, a struggling beginning firm trying to build up that account to take care of somebody when you had to let them go. And in those days, in the 60s, people were having whatever they were doing. They would work for me spring, summer, and fall, and then quit and go skiing for the winter. And I had to use my account for laying people off, which is what it's for, to pay them unemployment so they could go skiing. So there were a number of difficulties. One, I had a hard time finding people, but the sculptors and the other people who weren't exactly landscape architects learned well, and I had to give them a lot of attention to help them. And in fact, there's a very successful architect in Washington, D.C., Davis Buckley, who was a sculptor when he was working for me, and now he's an architect. And Leonard Newcomb has been teaching at Rhode Island School of Design in the landscape department for years. He was a sculptor when he came, where he never studied landscape architecture, but he worked for me for a number of years, so he was able to have the qualifications to get registered. And there were other people like that. And gradually I got more real live landscape architects, but I had to do a lot of the work myself and communicate with these talented people what we needed to do, and that was fine. It worked.